Alright, howdy folks, welcome back to the channel, welcome back to Broken Arrow with the open beta. You can now play this yourself as well, just have a link down in the description below. All you have to do is go to their Steam store page, click request access, and you can play this beta for like the next 2 weeks for free. With that being said, I'm trying to show you guys some online multiplayer gameplay because that's what this beta is about. But as you can see, I am not able to connect to the servers. I'm going online, I'm going offline, I'm being reconnected. So I promise you I will try my best to get you some gameplay footage this weekend, but today we're going to go through the Russian arsenal instead. However, before we jump into that, a couple of things I want to mention that I didn't say in yesterday's video. Number one, I have my graphics set to relatively low because the game seems to run pretty crappy if I go anywhere above like low to medium settings. So I saw some comments saying, wow, this game looks crap. It's like, well, this is on low to medium settings, and the game actually looks pretty decent. It's just that if I played any higher, my computer or the game just don't seem to play along very well. Furthermore, people are asking like, hey, where's, for example, the, well, US Patriot system? Currently, there's only 4 of the total 8 battle groups, or I guess subgroups, available in the game. For the Russians, it's the VDV and the armored or guards tanks, but the other 2, the Motostrelki or Marines, they don't exist yet in the game. Same goes for the Americans. The airborne and the support are not in the game just yet. I would assume that support will have stuff like the longer range Patriot AA missile. The only ones we have available are the Marines and the armored as well. We already looked at those yesterday, so we're not taking a look at those today. We're going to take a look at what is available for the Russians in the same format. We're going to go over Recon, Infantry, Vehicle Support, Halo Air. We're going to go through the packages that they have, though this one should be a little shorter because obviously we've already fully discussed all of the things that will set Broken Arrow apart. The way that you don't know the unit has, you know, better weapon systems, and this one will, for example, increase its spotting range by 20%, which is actually really not bad for a recon unit, and for 10 points that seems very, very worth doing. Somebody also asked the difference between kinetic and heat penetration, and every unit obviously has, if we swap to a unit that has weapons, we can see here that some units do kinetic type of damage and some units will do heat type of damage. Now if we go and look into the actual statistics of these, you'll figure out what is more effective against what. So for example, the BRM-3K has both heat and kinetic type of ammo, so it can be effective against, well, a certain amount of armor of both types. But some units will only carry either a heat or a kinetic type of ammo, and then that obviously means that, say you're firing purely heat at a vehicle like the Abrams, which has like 800 heat protection, if you take the Tusk 2 protection system, yeah, you're never even going to scratch it. So without going too deep into the game mechanics, that is really how to explain the difference between heat and kinetic penetration and armor values. But anyway, the Rio stats, we kind of looked at it already. We have that 10-point extra add-on, but you do go from 2,000 to 2,400. It's a 20% increase. That seems pretty worth it for just 10 points. The BRM-3K, it comes with an autocannon, sort of standard it looks like, though I believe this PRP, it just has a cord machine gun on it, so you get a little bit cheaper, but for 5 points, I feel like the autocannon is, well, it seems kind of silly not to bring it, but if you then look at this, it does cost you 700 view range, which is kind of a lot when you consider that this is a recon vehicle. Though what's interesting is that the turret doesn't seem to change, although this visually doesn't look like a lot. It doesn't actually change a lot in the armor value. And then we can also change its actual armor to add some ERA, which gives you 4 times more frontal armor and like what, 8 times more side ERA armor. So this is exactly what I was saying. Something that's purely heat related is going to have a lot more issues when you run this ERA protection. I guess we should also look at the 57mm gun, which just looks insanely massive. Let's take this off actually here. And we also have the 57mm gun as well with 2 Ataka M-ATGMs. But now we're looking at a 135-point unit with the armor 145-point unit from the base value, well, I guess base value of 85, because I feel like you should probably consider the cannon. Then again, you do lose out on the recon, on what is pretty much a recon vehicle. Now, the Soviets, or I keep saying Soviets, I mean to say the Russians, do actually have some UAVs available to them. I wouldn't be surprised if the airborne for the Americans will have that as well. Here is the 4-post, which would actually add 2 Cornet ATGMs to. It doesn't really do anything other than make it 50% more expensive, but you just got a very cheap vehicle to have some ATGMs on board for 25 extra points, which seems pretty worth it. The Orion, which has optics upgrade, which is, I think, always great for a recon vehicle to, you know, add better optics, and just makes sense to me. You get this sort of gimbal camera below the hull. We can get outer pylons. This could actually be very expensive with Cornets, Vikirs, or Cab 50s, which I think are bombs, and these are ATGMs. These are bombs, like precision bombs. And then we can also get another set of these, so we can add some more Vikirs, some more Cornets, or some more Cabs, making this a rather expensive vehicle. But considering you can fit this out to be anti-infantry or anti-building, or completely go for, say, ATGMs, it is an interesting decision to make. Although I am wondering why the Vikir and the Cornet here are more expensive than they are on this side. So maybe that has to do, I don't actually know why specifically these are more expensive, but might be a bug. The Cornets, as you can see, are more expensive here, but the bombs are less expensive. So maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe you know. If you do know, let me know in the comments, I suppose, because that's maybe probably an oversight more so than you know, a purposeful decision. The Sarmat 2, this is really one of those airborne drop vehicles for the VDV. This one comes with a Cord standard, but actually what's interesting is that the AGS, or the minigun, they don't change anything other than just giving you a different weapons platform. They don't even take away your airdrop ability, and they're all free upgrades, or I guess free interchangeable grades. And then the ATGM Matisse does cost a little bit more, but you do get an ATGM on what is pretty much just a ATV with a roof on it. The T90M Nakitka, this is one that I actually really like the look of. I think it has these anti-thermal blankets. We've seen how ineffective those are. But it is a very interesting, I think it's a very cool looking tank. And this one comes with a PKT or a Cord, which replaces, I'm pretty sure, the machine gun here on the roof. So you get a little bit better protection for 5 extra points. And the optics, we can go crazy and add, what is that? Almost 20%, a little bit less than 20% to the view range of this vehicle, but it is a Recon T90. Just keep in mind that you are starting to change the cost of it by like over 10%. Interesting is that the name becomes from Nakitka, becomes Razvechik, which I think means recon or reconnaissance, which is kind of cool. It's a kind of a cool addition. Just keep that in mind. That's a rather expensive upgrade for a little bit less than 20%, but that seems still pretty worth it for a recon vehicle. The Typhoon VDV. This can be upgraded into autocannon to really give it a little bit more firepower, but I'm actually surprised you don't seem to be losing much. You actually gain some view range, you gain smokes, and that's pretty much it. You actually don't lose any ability to transport passengers. I figured maybe this would remove passenger compartment space because, well, there's room for the ammo now and the gunner and everything, but nope, this is going to be perfectly fine. You're just making the vehicle twice as expensive. Then we have the VDV Razvedka, which are recon. They can come loud or suppressed. It's kind of cool. They changed their AK-74s for AK-103s. Their GPs kind of go from being the ones based on the 545 platform to ones on the 762 platform. The RPG stays the same, but they replaced their SVD with the Bullpup SVU, which is kind of cool. It's just a little bit, you know, 5-point difference. I don't know if that's going to make or break the bank, but it is cool to kind of have that ability to go for a suppressed team, or, well, minus the RPG, of course, or just a loud team. Then VDV Snipery, very obvious what that is. We can go for regular long range, or we can go for suppressed. Here, my assumption would be that the suppressed has probably less range, 700 compared to 600, and then, yeah, 1,000 compared to 800. So you do lose a little bit of range, but you're going to obviously have, is this accuracy? You're going to have better accuracy a little bit, but you're also going to, well, be suppressed. And of course, the DVL and the VSS are really cool, though this looks more like an AS-Val. No, never mind. It looks like a VSS-M, perhaps, with a not wooden stock, but still a very cool unit. And I think, I do feel like they're very pink. And then the VDV Spetsnaz, they come with a thermobaric launcher or with a Matisse ATGM. So you can set this up more for, you know, an anti-infantry duty where they will destroy units that are set up in a building, or for anti-vehicle duty with a Matisse. Moving on to the infantry themselves, the AGS-40. Again, I'm not sure if this is going to be the way to carry their weapons. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, maybe they'll change it. But, you know, this is just an automatic grenade launcher team. The Gavardi Motostrelki, which are riflemen, sort of basic rifleman squad. Very similar setup to what you'd see for the US side. Anti-tank, some grenade launchers, a medium machine gun or two. Actually a pretty big squad with, like, what, 4 launchers? So that's actually not terrible. The Ingegneri, okay, these guys look very interesting. The Ingegneri Sturmoviki, like assault engineers. I love the fact they have this shield here. It's a shame that we don't actually see it on them, though I'm not really sure how it would really be. They do look very cool, very armored, with, you know, a plethora of interesting. I'm not sure what a KSK is. This might be a shotgun. I'm not sure. Yeah, it is a shotgun. It fires slugs 300 meters apparently. But yeah, we have a shotgun, kind of similar to what the Americans, I think. The American engineers have a shotgun as well, or some shotguns. But it's interesting to see that the Russians here have that as well. And then I think this is a thermobaric version of the RPG ammo. So it has, assumedly, a decent amount of splash damage. Moving on to the Pazurk. The Pazurk Verba, which is you know, an AA team, not really much to see here. The VDV AGS-30. So it seems that this is a Motostrelki AGS. This is a VDV AGS. We just get 2 of them, I guess, 1 extra man in the squad. There's probably a slight variation between the AGS-30 being a little older versus the AGS-40, but really that's the main thing, is that these are VDV, so you got 1 guy extra versus this squad where you obviously are to be a little bit less resilient, I should say, against incoming fire, because you just have, you know, 25% less personnel in your squad. The VDV DSH, just a little, I think this is a VDV squad, although I remember VDV squads being 6 men large, so that might be a Soviet Afghan thing. It's a regular infantry squad, but for the VDV. The VDV Igla, just their version of the Verba, although I think the Igla is a worse version than the Verba. The VDV Cornet, we'd actually change this to the Cornet M, which I'm not sure if this is changing anything here. It doesn't seem, it just seems to not change. Maybe that's a bug? Oh no, never mind. Penetration's a little bit higher. 1200 heat pen versus 1000. And there may be some, I guess we can pin this and take a quick look here as we click this away. So we get more heat pen, we get a little bit more damage, we get the same range, we get, I mean, really not much. The only thing you're really getting it for is for 10 extra heat pen, and or 200 extra heat pen, which seems kind of worth it for 10 points. If you're going to spend 90, you might as well spend 100 for that, you know, what is that, 20% extra damage potential or penetration potential. And I guess also had one extra damage as well. Then last but not least, the VDV Matisse, and this is just your regular ATGM squad, a little cheaper than the Cornet. I believe this is it has a little bit less pen, especially when you get the upgrade for this with the Cornet M. Then this is going to have like 40 or 25% less penetration. Moving on to the Russian vehicles. Keep in mind that a lot of these are going to be vehicles that you will select to call in with your infantry. So, for example, the BTRD is going to be a vehicle you call in, and infantry will come alongside with it. And then you can either say, hey, I want to keep this vehicle on the battlefield, or I want to go and have it drive back and get the money back for it. The B-10 Kurganets, which kind of reminds me of a T-15. I don't know if we have the T-15, or a T-15 is further down the line, never mind. Which comes with the Cord HMG. We can give it the Boomerang module, which I think is the turd of the Boomerang APC. For 45 points, you do go from just having a Cord to now having a 30mm, a Cornet, and a PKT machine gun, or the Epocha module, which I've never heard of before. And this thing seems to have, what is that? Are those ATGMs? Okay, so you get 4 Cornet missiles, and you get 8 of these Bulat missiles, which seem ATGM-y at 1,000-meter range. This seems like an insane vehicle. The only thing is, you're taking the cost from, like, basically very cheap. to, you know, from 45 points, especially with the upgraded APS system, you're taking this from 40 to 140, or from 45 to 140, which is a little crazy. But hey, if you want to go crazy, no one's stopping you. It just seems like a lot. You actually also, this is the APS system, yeah, so there's not, wait, is the armor system? Okay, so it's purely APS. I thought maybe you get some, there's already ERA on this, so that's why the heat protection is already relatively high. Although it does seem like weird that the heat protection on this seems to be the same size as here on the, it seems weird that the heat protection here is 4 times, like it's like 400, right, with heat protection on it. But on the Courgenets, this seems like a lot of heat protection, but it's only giving you 120 and 100. But what do I know? Moving on to the BMD2, which is an air-droppable BMP. We can give it, just have it keep the regular 30 mil. We can give it a concourse ATGM or a side turret-mounted BMD2M version with the Cornet missiles. The BMD4M comes with base armor. For 5 points, you can up armor it and give it a little bit extra protection. Like, it's barely worth mentioning. I feel like the hit points do go up by a little bit as well, but I feel like you got to keep in mind that when you do this, you lose the air-droppable part of an airborne capable APC, so that's maybe a lot to sacrifice. The BMPT Terminator, something that I only learned about when I played Armored Warfare like years ago, and this thing is basically a T-72 chassis, but it's made to mess up areas in cities. I think something they learned from the Battle of Grozny way back in the 90s. So this thing can come with additional ERA armor, which doesn't really do much. It adds 1 hit point and it takes the side heat from 600 to 800, which is obviously a 33% increase, but that seems rather expensive for 10 points. But then we can also give it 2 AG-17s as if it wasn't enough yet. So now we also get 2 grenade launchers on this thing. We get 2 30 mils, we get Ataka ATGMs, we get machine guns, and now we'd also get 2 grenade launchers on this thing. I'm not even sure exactly where. This is the machine gun. Are these the AGSs? I can't really tell. They might be the AGS. This is, I think, the machine gun. Maybe the AGSs appear like right next to the turret or right next to the 30 mils. But this is just kind of crazy. But hey, if you really want your Terminator to be over 200 points, or 200 points, I should say, or I could make it over 200 points, then you can go crazy. The BTR-D, this can be given a coordinate AGS for 10 points, and it actually does not take away from its ability to transport troops or to be air transportable. So that seems pretty worth it just for 10 points. That is a little bit more fire support when you're using these in a direct combat role. The BTR-MDM Rakusha, now this seems like it might be more of a transport or logistics vehicle, but we can give it a ZU-23-2, we can give it a ZU-23-2M, and we can also give it a ZU-23-2M plus Igla, turning it into a Skrzet, which is more of an anti-air focused vehicle, so that's interesting. But I'm not really sure if this is just a transport or not. It can hold 15 men, and actually changing any of these does not take away its ability to be airdropped, though you do actually. Okay, that's interesting. You have 1200 view range, now you go to 1000, but then you can upgrade it again, and then you kind of go back to 1200. So it almost doesn't seem worth ever to get this. You should always get this just to keep your view range the same. And then, you know, if you want to go crazy with the Igla on top for extra AA, you can always do that. The BTR-RD robot, you can probably change the ATGM type to be a Cornet M. We already looked at that with the infantry, just have a little bit more penetration. The BTR-ZD Skrzet, here with the ZU-23, you can have the 2M or the Igla, and it's a little cheaper actually. It's interesting how this is a little cheaper on this vehicle than it is on this one to get the Igla version, so maybe worth spending 40 extra points, which almost doubles the cost of this unit, but you do get a pretty decent AA system. The K-16 Boomerang, here we can go kind of crazy. We can go up armored a little bit. Afghanit, which actually does, oh, I thought it took away the amphibious capability of it, or we can go up armored plus the APS system, which is kind of a lot actually, but let's just put it on there for 40 points. And then we can even add the Boomerang BM module on it, which now just makes this a 135 point vehicle. If we take these off, going back to 50. So that's like an 85 point increase. So again, is it worth it? It might be, but that's a lot of points to lose for a unit. But this makes it into obviously a very capable infantry supporting APC. The Coronet D1. This is going to come with 2 coronets plus optics, although I guess 2 plus 2. They can also go for 2 times 4, but you do lose the optics, so that's interesting. So your regular is 1400 meter range with 4 rockets, though you can go for 8 rockets. A little bit more autonomy, a little bit less worrying about giving it, resupply, but you lose a little bit of view distance, so it can't spot for itself as easily anymore. The Sprut SD, which is like an airborne tank made, I think this is like a pure tank destroyer. Now this has the Sprut SDM modernization kit, which doesn't seem, it seems to swap the ammo type, the reload time, and the view range. It does cost you 20 extra points, but that doesn't seem like a lot, and it doesn't take away your ability to airdrop. It doesn't take it away that it's amphibious, and the only thing it does is, which surprises me again, I wish it maybe made it a little heavier or sort of messed with its speed, but as you can see, it, well, very clearly seems to just only really improve the vehicle, well, better for 20 points, but there's just a little bit here with the ammo that I feel like is a little bit too minute to now look into in detail. The Sturm S with the Kokon, we can however give it a Sturm SM version, which now has Ataka missiles, which are just better overall. We see more effective range, more damage, more supply cost too though, but also 200 millimeters of extra penetration, and the missile flies at basically over 50% faster, which may make it easier for you to actually hit your target, you know, once you have spotted one. Moving on to the T-14 Armata, this just comes as is. It's interesting they decided to add it. I think this is more something to give the Russians like a real option against the Abrams. In the end, obviously, we have yet to really see these fight Abrams or, well, really anything at all. So it's interesting the developers decided to add this, maybe just to get some like prototype hype going. People are always interested to look at the T-14, whether it is to crap all over it or to, you know, lie about what it's capable of or not. But it's interesting to see that they added it. It's a cool tank, I will say. It looks cool. The idea behind it is cool, but whether it's actually going to ever see real service is a different question. Then the T-15, which I believe is just a T-14, but like really an APC variant, here comes standard with the Boomerang model, but keep in mind it is $250 though for an APC. We can even give it the Kinzhal module, which replaces the 30mm gun with a 57mm gun. The thing is, you also swap from a Coronet to Atakas, which I think are better, but you do lose out from having 4 Coronets to just 2 Atakas. And last but not least, the TATU. This one has a bunch of different variants. The OBR-90. Then for 30 points more, you can go to T80UM2, or we can kind of lose some points but get some more recon on the T80UM. And last but not least, the T80UA, which has some ECM percentage here. So this is just going to add, if you compare it, a little bit more frontal armor on both heat and kinetic. You obviously gain a little bit of different ammo types, probably has just different stats on penetration. And this goes for actually all of these. They kind of sort of move a little bit. The TU-80M has 2 chords. This one has ECM. So it's cool to see that you can have one unit be basically 4 different unit types. Moving on to the support tab, we have the 2K22M1 Tunguska. This comes in a couple of variants. Here, the Tunguska M1 with the upgraded 9M311 missiles, as well as the Pantsir S1, which will replace the anti-air missiles with 8 9M311s to 2 times 6 57E6Es. So these are going to be a lot deadlier, but you're paying a massive premium on top of that. You're going from 200 to 275, though you do get active smokes, as well as you get a little bit of extra view range, but you're paying pretty much, you know, you could buy like what? You can buy 4 of these for the cost of 3 of these, if my math is correct. Or basically, well, you're adding a lot of money, so it doesn't really make sense to go for this unless you're really focusing on microing the hell out of this one. The 2S31 Venya, This comes with high explosive rounds, though we can give it the HERAP ammo, which just seems to change a little bit. This is targets infantry and vehicles, and this is a laser guided type of ammunition. The 2S35 Koalicja, which comes with high explosive rounds, is something we looked at the US tree as well. Cluster rounds or extended range, which is interesting. So let's take a look here at, say, the cluster ammo. Let's take a look at the range for 200 meters and take a look at this one. 4,500. It doesn't seem like a crazy amount of extra range. For like 300 meters extra range doesn't. I don't know if that's worth 25 points, but it might be. I actually don't know because I haven't really been able to play the game much, but it might be worth it. It just seems like for 300 meters extra range seems like kind of crazy to pay 25 extra points. Then the 2S41 Druk, which comes with either mostly HE or mostly smoke, something we looked at in the US tree. It just swaps. It's kind of cool. Hey, I'm going to focus on HE and then only a couple of smoke. Or hey, I'm going to focus on smoke and it's only a couple of HE. The 2S9 Nona S with the Nona SM, which is a modernized version of the same gun, just a little bit different, you know, ammo to ammo reload. It actually gives you the Kitolov laser guided missile, or laser guided shell, I should say, as well. The 9K51 Grad, which has high explosive warheads, though for 50 or for 100 points, you can load incendiary rockets or cluster ammo for obviously different targets on the battlefield. The 9K58 Kama, which almost looks like a Star Wars weapon, with basic reload of 55 to 65 seconds, or a fast reload, which seems kind of crazy, for 20 extra points, for only 10% extra cost, you are almost having that reload, which just seems, this seems like a no-brainer. This one seems like a no-brainer. This thing looks like a railgun from Star Wars, but this seems like a no-brainer for half the cost on a 10%, or half the reload on a 10% increase. That seems worth it. The 9K317 Book. The Book M2 can be upgraded to the Book M3, which gives you more rockets, gives you less blast radius, but does give you a little, actually, I think the only real reason is you get a little bit more range, but you get a little bit more ammo, like 50%, but your blast radius is heavily reduced, and you obviously are going to have to pay more for the supply cost for these missiles. You're not really caring about losing 5 mils of penetration, I think, on an AA system. But last but not least, it does go 100 meters per second or 100 speed faster, which might be useful, especially if you're trying to take down planes that are flying really fast. But yeah, I mean, it seems kind of worth it. I'm just worried about the blast radius being like, what, a third as big, basically, or like three-quarters smaller, less than, basically at least 50% smaller than the original, which seems a little slow, or a little low. The Derivitsaya, this one comes with a 57mm gun. You can upgrade that to have now 12 Sosna missiles instead of this 57mm gun. You do lose the ability to have a active radar as well as the smokes, but I'm not sure if this is worth it. I'd have to play the game and check out this unit specifically. 70 points seems like a lot to go from 130 to 200, basically. The KAMAZ VDV, just a supply truck slash transport truck. Then the KAMAZ 6560. We can at least give this some armor. I've already talked about this in the past. It gives you a little bit extra health. I've already talked about this in the other video. If you're supply trucks, or like if you're transporting trucks or infantry in these types of trucks and they get shot at, you're kind of doing something wrong. Although what's interesting is, this like a joke? This guy gets, maybe this might be a misplacement on the character, but it looks like he's got like this sort of face shield on. It's just probably the chair that's glitching through him a little bit, but that's interesting. And then last but not least, I said that's a lie. There's actually a couple things more here. The Strela 10MN, which you can upgrade with the Luchnik E, or another Sosna, which would be a really, again, this can target projectiles. So I wonder if this could knock out enemy missiles coming in. Assumedly, it could, which is interesting, and turns this from a 110 point cheap unit to 190 points. But if it can take down enemy missiles, that actually might be relatively useful. The S300 V4 Antni. This thing, okay, this is clearly a work in progress. Even is it's spelled in reverse over there. Okay, so we can give it 4 gladiator missiles or 2 giant or giant, I guess that would just be giant, almost said as a gigant, as giant. This is an insane vehicle. I've never even seen it or heard of this thing before, but this thing has either 4 missiles or 2 missiles, and there doesn't really seem to be a massive, okay, no, the range is in, okay, the range is where the difference is. So you gain 700-meter range, you lose a little, you get a little bit of blast radius, and you, well, yeah, but you also have to reload this thing more often. So it's kind of like a hit and miss. Like, hey, yeah, this is a little better, but you have to reload it more often. So the 9K331 Tor, which comes either with 8 or 16 missiles, which almost reminds me of like a nuclear submarine. You know, when they launch what they have in their roof mounted, or I guess in the top of their submarine when they're going to launch against you know, an enemy platform on land. Interesting, a slight difference, a little bit more range, a little bit, you know, you get double the ammo. Max speed goes up a little bit. So in general, this is an upgrade, of course, besides having, you know, twice the amount of missiles, but you're also paying a third extra. So that might be worth it, might not be. Now, finally, last but not least, the TOS-1 Buratino, which is basically a giant FU machine to anything it's going to hit, where you can add some armor to it. It just seems a little... Is it useful? Maybe. If you're trying to prevent being counter batteried, I guess. It gives you a little bit more health. It does increase your heat and connected protection a lot. And then, of course, we can go from a TOS-1 to the TOS-1A, which increases its range by like 900 meters, though its minimal range does increase as well. So you have to be... you cannot target units that are too close to you. It also gives you a little bit more dispersion, but I feel like the range, and you do lose 6 missiles, but I do feel like it might be worth it just for that extra 900-meter range. Moving on to the helicopters, the KA-52. Now, we're not going to go over every single pylon for all of these because at this point, I'm sure you guys get it. But we can go over gun pods. We can have rockets. We can have attack ATGMs, Vikir ATGMs. We can make this thing really freaking expensive. We're not looking at, like, is this the most expensive we can get? Yeah, we're looking at a 300-point helicopter, which, well, it was initially, if we take off everything, only like 145 points. So that's kind of crazy. The Mi-26, a transport/supply helicopter, doesn't seem like I can actually add anything to this. The Mi-28N, we can give it a radar on top, much like the Apache, for 20 points. It gives it actually a pretty decent, substantial, like 20% extra view range or spawning range. We can go crazy on mixes of Ataka and Igla, so now it's capable against fighting both aircraft and vehicles, as well as we can give it some of the big S-13 rockets or the slightly smaller S-8 rockets, which this thing is now 270 points from, well, what it could be, which is like basically very cheap. I mean, this seems maybe a little silly, but hey, 130 points for a helicopter is not a lot. The Mi-28NM, again, we can just add some crazy missiles to it. I really should look into the details of these missiles. I'm sure there's a large variation between all of them, but it's just to showcase really the modability. So you can make this as cheap as you want with just some crappy rockets. Here, now you go. Here you have, what, 80 S-8 rockets, and it's going to cost you like 180. Or you could, like I said, you can kind of go crazy with some Lemur HE missiles and some Vikirs and Iglas, and now you're looking at 340. So a lot of options. So if you see an Mi-28NM, you just don't know what he's capable of until he blasts one of your helicopters out of the sky, or until he blows up your Abrams. So that's a very cool way of keeping this game fresh in every session you play. The Mi-35NM, or M, this has, okay, well, we can get the Vitebsk ECM on this, which gives it actually kind of these weird, okay, that's a lot of systems on this thing. I don't know, that's crazy. There's a lot of just additional stuff that gets added to this thing at the side, even over here. That's cool looking though, but that luck is an insane amount of just, I think the weight should go up a little bit, you know, and the speed should probably go down. But you do get 10 extra electronic countermeasures, and we get some ECM. Then we can have the starboard pylons be different from the port side pylons, which is interesting. So you could go for Iglas on the one side, you can go for Atakas on the other side, so you can again make this vehicle very expensive. And then last but not least, you can even change the inner pylons, really again going ham on on this. It makes it actually kind of look like a Frankenstein freak right now because it's all different, but it's cool that you can just swap that in between what you want. Then the Mi-8 AMTSH, again, abilities to swap the pylons out, so we can add either nothing to this or some Kokon AT or some Igla AA missiles. Same goes for some more Kokon, some rockets, some gun pods or some smaller rockets. And then the same thing, we can go for just a bunch of big rockets or a bunch of smaller ones, or you can just go really naked. So this thing can be as cheap as like 80 points, which still comes, I guess, with some Iglas, which may be an oversight. I'm not sure if that should be completely naked, but we can make this thing as expensive as we want, which would be this, this, and this. And now we're looking at 165. Then the AMTSH-VN, we can just add some more stuff on this. I assume there is a slight difference. It looks like this has a little bit more spotting range, but that seems to be the only difference between these two. Just quickly, if we take all the pylons off, I guess we could take a quick look at that. I don't know if it would. Okay, so there's a cord machine gun that I can't seem to take off this thing. This comes standard with Kokons, although I can't. No, I want to try and take this off. I don't know why it doesn't seem to work. So that might be a bug in the beta. Keep in mind this is in beta. Although this does actually seem to come with just machine guns regardless, which is cool. So this thing doesn't. This one has two machine guns like on the wing pods right here. The VN. And then last one is the cargo variant, which I'm assuming, yeah, we can add a little bit of firepower to in a very Russian style way of doing that, from just rockets to nothing to gun pods, or the best I think of both worlds is to combine the gun pods with a couple of rockets, so you can really do some area denial or support, but your vehicle does become a lot more expensive, which this is something that you have to send in to transport your infantry to their location. But yeah, if you are worried about losing it, then obviously maybe don't upgrade it all the way. Last but not least, we have the IL-76MD, which is going to be a transport vehicle or transport aircraft. It has a kind of, can't barely show it to you here, but it's got a couple of defensive weapons all the way in the back. It'll be cool to see this being used. I'm actually very interested to do some airborne operations in this game when I get my hands on actually being able to go in. As you can see, I'm still reconnecting over here. The Su-25T. Now there's a lot of stuff we can throw on this. I feel like I can look at this forever. We're just gonna make this the most expensive we can make it, and then we'll go through the most cheapest one. So this now costs 470, but if you look at the amount of just ordnance on this, we have a 30mm cannon, we have two KH-29 cruise missiles or ATGMs, we have 16 Vikirs, 4 bombs, and 4 R-60 air-to-air missiles. Then we can take this down all the way to one of the cheapest we can do, which would just be some rockets, some fuel, nothing, and well, if we take the okay, so we add the radar for 20 points, we go from 5 to 10,000 view distance, which seems like an instant, you know, you have to buy that if you're serious about using this thing for 20 extra points. If we take it off, it's only 165. That is an insane amount cheaper, but yeah, now it's just not as cool as if it was before. The Su-30SM, we can make this into a AGM, so like a ground attack plane, or we can even add some fuel air bombs to it. But what would make more sense probably is to go for some of these shorter or longer range anti-air missiles. And now it's more focused on what it probably should be doing, which is targeting, you know, enemy aircraft. But we can take 12 missiles on this, though I'd probably recommend bringing the ECM pods at least, so you get a little bit of ECM on your aircraft. But yeah, you can make this into a pretty much an air-to-air fighter or an air-to-ground attacker, whatever you want. The Su-34 with, I can only assume you can load a massive amount of heavy ordnance on this. 18 to, okay, hang on just a second. Okay, so we now are carrying like 30 small bomblets, but you can customize this to carry like obviously some massive bombs, but you obviously get less of them. We can have some anti-radiation, so seed missiles. We can even carry actual cruise missiles, so you can make this Su-34 exactly the way you want it. It's a lot of money to lose. 525. This is not even the most expensive this thing can get. What's the most expensive we can make this thing? 180, 130. 180 is already an entire unit. That's like from like, so this is 655 right now, but we do get, okay, that's, I think that means dumb bomb, but okay, interesting. That's an interesting way to refer to that as. From cruise missiles, we get 10 dumb bombs, and we also get 2 anti-air missiles with an ECM pod, but now you're the equivalent of like 10 VDV teams, so I guess keep that in mind. The Su-35S, again, a whole bunch of missiles, fuel tanks, probably some ECM. Don't really have to go over this again. I mean, it's the same thing as the other ones. Then the Su-57, I feel like I've mentioned this before, but the T-14, it's a little bit of make-believe. I believe this just is, it's cool, it makes sense. I don't think you should take it too serious, though. I don't think that the developers are like, hey, this is going to be something we'll actually see being used, but it's kind of cool to add it. It gives it like a little bit of a Tom Clancy's End War, I guess, vibe for me. And then last but not least, the Tu-160, which can carry, it's kind of cool that they laid them out like this so you can actually see it. We can carry 12 cruise missiles, cluster cruise missiles, 14 1,500 kilogram bombs, 2 9,000 kilogram fuel air bombs, 14 1,500 fuel air bombs, or 44 thermobaric 500 kilogram bombs. So a lot of potential. Clearly, your vehicle is always going to cost 600. It's either going to cost 650 or even 700, depending on what you want to bring. And well, I can only tell you that this is obviously a lot of money to lose if it gets shot down. So you can really only put this thing forward if you know you have at least local air supremacy, if not, you know, having suppressed their AA systems with radar, with SEED. So interesting, but very expensive, very risky to lose this one. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this look at the Russian arsenal. I feel like there was maybe even more to look at, especially in their vehicle and support tab. But for now, I hope you guys enjoyed. We're going to take a look at the game. Hopefully, as you can see, I'm still reconnecting, which means I'm not able to get into a game even now. But I hope to get one for you guys out on the weekend. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you in the next one.